What's up, guys? E-Drone here. We're going to be starting a little early tonight. I was a little off on my countdown there. Welcome into episode 10 of Send It Saturday, and we have a special guest in the house tonight that we're going to bring out very, very shortly. Let me get over to chat. Welcome in Razman FPV, Tommy G, Savannah's Adventure, Rebecca. Hey, hey. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me on your Saturday. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our special guest for the night, Sean from Geeksvana. Welcome in.
Hey, Eric. Hey, everybody. Great to be here.
Thanks so much for agreeing to be on the show as well, because you are actually across the pond. And yeah. What time is it there now?
It's about 1 a.m., something around there. So it's still early evening for us YouTubers.
Well, I greatly appreciate you coming in, and glad to have you. A lot of my watchers, subscribers, followers, I wanted to make sure they knew about you in Geeksvana. And I thought, what a better way than to just bring you on the show.
Absolutely, indeed. It's always good to meet different audiences, and it's one of the things that I really enjoy about YouTube is getting out there and meeting so many people that I would never have met in a million years, for geographical reasons mainly. So no, it's great. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, show them some love in the chat. Welcome in. And what I'd like to do right now, get back to the chat here. Hey, welcome in, Carpy Chris. Welcome in tonight. I'd actually like to talk about you, Sean, and how exactly you got started in drones, because I've seen your YouTube channel, Geeksvana. I've just seen all kinds of progression and growth, which is great.
Yes, very thankful for that, especially the recent few weeks as well. Yeah, I mean, drones for me actually started with. Now, I will admit to the audience, no booze in the chat, please. I am a camera drone flyer. I have yet to fly. Well, I've flown a little bit of FPV, but nothing like the experiences of the audience. My first drone is actually hanging up here on the wall. Here is a Parrot Bebop 1. Which is obviously like almost toy grade really, but it used to come with I don't know if you've seen them, the huge Sky controllers that are literally, the controller is about this wide, with huge sticks on it, and then you put a big tablet in the middle basically. So started with that, and then progressed through a couple of different Parrot models up to the Bebop 2, and then as a camera guy, of course, I caught the DJI bug, which so many of us do. Unfortunately, yeah, it's since then it's been things like the Mavic Air and the Minis and the Air 2s, etc. I've always come at things from more the hobbyist side of things, as far as my personal experience is concerned. I do now hold professional qualifications, but I don't necessarily practice in that, if that makes sense. It's not something that I don't have a photography business or anything else like that a lot of the camera drone people have. So for me, it's still very much a hobby, which is good.
Well, and don't leave just yet if you're in FPV, because Geeksvana actually does do a FPV spotlight on Wednesdays, which is actually ironically how I found your channel.
Yes.
And I thought I thought it was excellent that you were taking FPV pilots in the community and taking their footage that they had emailed to you, and editing it all together and adding some music and just making a nice spotlight. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, we're all about collaboration on the channel, and I have a few different co-hosts. I work with a lot of other channels regularly, and one of the things which stuck out to me is that there is not a fence between camera drone and FPV, but it can sometimes feel a little bit like them and us. So I've tried to break that wall down a little bit by having interviews with people like Troy at Quad Standard Labs, talking about the Sicario drone, and having people like Mako Reactor on to help with some content as well. And then the FPV Wednesday thing, which we haven't actually done for a few weeks now, which is starting up again at the end of January, just because we've been so busy with other content at the moment. I mean, really, though, our biggest problem is what content do we put out at the moment, because there's so much happening in the drone world. And yeah, because obviously we are a drone news channel as well, that the drone news is one side of the things that we do. Of course, we have to include FPV in that, and it's an important side of things. And really it's been fun because we've brought some of our camera drone audience into the FPV world and vice versa. The FPV audience that I've picked up have sort of come into the camera drone world a little bit as well. So it's trying to bring everyone together a little bit, but somewhere where we can all talk. There's no sort of if I put a video out and my FPV audience don't like it, they tell me in the comments, and we have a good, healthy debate about it, and we talk about the differences and the similarities between the two sides of the hobby. And yeah, just it's fun to talk to people, and I enjoy talking to people that agree with me, that disagree with me, and that I especially like speaking to people that absolutely hate me, frankly, because they're the ones that can sometimes have the most interesting debates with. So,
Welcome in real quick, Jessica Linzer and RC Funds Diversions. Welcome in, guys. Thanks for joining us. It's funny that you mentioned, like the GPS side and the FPV side, because it actually kind of does feel like that sometimes.
yeah.
And I think I'm one of the rare, I guess you could say, rare people who's just into every kind of drone. If it flies, I like it, whether it's a toy,
Awesome.
a
Yeah.
DJI, or FPV. As you can see behind me, it kind of grows on you.
Indeed, which is actually one of the reasons why I have resisted FPV so far, because I am a bit of a rabbit hole person. I will chase something down a rabbit hole. Whether it's I started gaming and suddenly I've got a collection of dozens of gaming controllers and that type of thing. And I won't say about my other collections. That's a whole other thing. So I am a bit of a rabbit hole person. So that's one of the reasons why I am why I've stayed away from FPV, because I know it can be all consuming to a certain extent. But I'm close. I'm close. Whether or not. Now, I don't think the DJI FPV drone is going to be an actual FPV drone, but I think that will probably be as close as I'll get to it in early 2020, whenever they decide to release it.
Speaking of that, with you actually kind of just putting your toes in FPV. Now, let's just say you wanted to get into it, would you go the route of buying something that's already, assembled, or would you want to go the route of you want the whole experience, you want to build it yourself,
It's an interesting one, because I love to build things. I love to take things apart and know how they work. I'm the son of a mechanic, and he was a mechanic and truck driver, and we used to work on the farm during the summer and that type of thing. So I'm more than used to getting my hands dirty and learning how things work the hard way, because you've got to fix it, because there's no one else that you can call in to fix it. So I like that side of things, and I think I would enjoy the build side of things, but I think time wise, I just don't have the time to put into it. And what I don't like, and I'll probably upset a few of my friends in the drone community here, but I don't like the people that play at it and then almost think they're an FPV expert. Does that make sense? You get some camera drone guys that will hop over to FPV and it very quickly become expert. And I think I'm kind of taking it from the point of view that I'm learning as much as I can about it before I even delve into it at all, so that I have a basic knowledge of what I'm doing. But I would probably go, if I were to take the plunge, I would probably go for like a little Emacs kit or something, just to experience it and to learn probably the whoop side of things, and then progress on from there and think, do I enjoy that style of flying, etc. And then moving on to builds from there. But there would probably be a very big leap and a decent amount of time between me starting the ready to fly kits and moving over to a build. There would probably be quite a big gap between that, basically. But saying that, I think the DJI FPV drone is something that I'm very interested in, but I don't think it's an FPV drone per se, whenever it does come out.
It strikes me as something that's more than likely going to be on the cinematic side of things.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that, because now we've come to a fork in the road where we don't just have, FPV and camera drones. Now we have FPV cinematic, FPV freestyle. We have different variations of FPV.
exactly.
So yeah, it could get a little bit, like
If
you
it,
said, of a rabbit hole.
yeah, exactly. If it wasn't for if it wasn't for FPV cinematic, I probably wouldn't personally be that interested in moving over to it. I'm not someone that's going to be going to a park and ripping packs and just enjoying like the fantastic flight like, of yours that we shared around that car park. I love watching that stuff. I love talking to people about the freestyle side of things, and I think it's a fantastic hobby, and I can definitely see the attraction and the freedom to it. But I don't think that's the side that I would ever necessarily go down. I'm going to be much more the sort of FPV cinematic side, and that attracts me because there are shots that FPV cinematic can get that I could never get with a DJI drone.
Bingo.
But of course, there is a whole route to go around, and I respect that route. And I think that's the other thing about FPV is I respect the hobby enough not to think I can just jump into it and say I'm going to build a drone. And for a fact, for a start, I've just called the quad a drone. So I'm just typical camera drone guy.
I still do the same thing. I call it a drone.
Yeah. So I still want to go through that journey and make sure that I do it the right way and learn enough about it to be able to fly. But yeah, it'll probably be a Whoop or something accompanying the DJI FPV drone, so that I'll very much be in the shallow end of the pool, waving at all you experts down the deep end.
Well, I'm thankful for the cinematic because without that, I think the FPV hobby will be a lot smaller than what it is now, and we're already considered to be a niche hobby as it is. So I would love to see the FPV community continue to grow so that we have more of a voice.
Yes.
Because the more of us that are out there, the more of a voice we'll have to be able to continue to have fun and enjoy this great and amazing hobby.
Absolutely, and I think I've in especially in the recent months where we have had a bit more FPV knowledge on the channel, and I've been interacting with more people that I would say know what they're talking about in terms of the FPV hobby. I almost start to see it now as the FPV are the motorcyclists of the hobby, and us camera drone guys are the car drivers. So and it's kind of like sometimes you can't really batch all that together. Yes, we're all automotive and we share the same road, but the bikers are very different to us guys driving our little safe sedans around, etc. So I've learned to respect that difference whilst wanting to learn as much about it as I can as well.
And there is definitely a lot to learn. There's a reason that it's niche, right? Because if it was easy enough for everybody to get into it, without putting in a little bit of effort, I think we would see it grow a lot more.
Yeah, and it's also the reason why when you do see issues out there in the news and that type of thing with drones, it is a camera drone guy that went down to Best Buy, bought a drone, and just threw it in the air thinking he knows what he can do. Because you can't do that. Even with a ready to fly kit, you can't do that. You can't really get yourself in trouble because the benchmark to being able to fly proficiently enough to get yourself into any kind of trouble is actually much higher. So and the cost and everything else like that. So it's a cool side of the hobby.
Yeah. John from RC Fun says that he really does respect the Parrot Bebop 1 on the wall. That was his best GPS drone for a while.
I love that drone. I have to say it was one of the ones that, as I said, it was my first one. I ended up buying two because I bought that one and controlled it just with my phone. And I thought, okay, literally the first flight trying to control it with the, when you put your thumbs on the screen and things. It was a horrendous flight, and it lasted about 30 seconds where I said, no, this is not safe. I then bought another kit, which was a yellow one, which came with a controller as well. I had a lot of fun learning with that drone. I had the advantage that when I was very much a hobbyist, when I was first starting out, I joined a flying club over here in the UK, and I was very fortunate that the guys there, it was actually a heli club, they do 3D heli flying, scale flying, FPV quads, FPV 3D, and that type of thing.
How do those heli guys get along with the FPV guys? Just out of curiosity, because over here it's kind of.
I was very lucky. I was so lucky that the club I'm a member of everybody gets on very well.
That's
Because in actual
awesome.
fact, a lot of clubs in this country, very much like the feedback I get about the States with the AMA fields, a lot of them don't like drones full stop, whether it's camera drone or FPV. And actually we didn't have that problem. I'm not sure if it's because we don't have fixed wing at our club, so it's either heli or quad. So I think there's a bit of brotherhood there already. The fact that the it is an upward rotor, well, hopefully upward rotor hobby. But I managed to learn so much from those guys. So I had the advantage, even though I was a camera drone flyer, that the safety side of things and the skill side of things of actually being able to fly the drone if you should lose, especially with the Parrot drones, if you should lose the automated systems, that you can still keep that thing in the air and bring it back in one piece. So I was very fortunate from that point of view. And I think that, when you're speaking to someone, especially some of those heli scale models where they've invested a couple of $1,000s in them easily, you learn to respect the thing you've got in the air and bringing it back safely each time.
Wow. That's awesome that you're able to kind of see a whole new dynamic from that side, and then actually them kind of like welcome you in with open arms and like kind of groom you so that you're kind of
Yeah,
getting ready to
that's
get
right.
into the hobby. That's awesome, man. That's the kind of support that I like to see,
Yeah.
because that's the kind of support right there that gets people into the hobby.
Exactly, because we've got people there like our chairman George, who is he's been in the hobby for about 45 years. So and we've got people like that, and then we've got young upstarts, young upstarts like myself, and even younger. We have teenagers in the club as well who are just starting out. So there's a lot of different skill ranges there and a lot of experience, and we have an environment where you can ask any question and not feel stupid, basically, which is I think is one of the important things, because you can, especially good old Facebook, you can get those groups where someone will ask a question and they'll just get bombarded for not knowing a simple answer, essentially.
I really that just really just irks my nerves, man, because there's no faster way to turn somebody away from a hobby than to take somebody who doesn't know, who wants to know, who's hungry to know,
Yeah,
and sit there and make fun of them and talk down to them and make them feel stupid for asking a question. Please don't do that.
yeah,
Please,
exactly.
please, please don't do that. Let's encourage people. Let's bring more people into the
Yeah,
hobby, because, like I said, the more people that we have,
yes,
the stronger of a voice that we'll have later
exactly,
on down the road.
exactly, yes,
So,
indeed.
real quick, Sean, because I do want to transition and actually talk about some of those UK laws over there. But real quick, for the FPV guys, if they would like to have their footage submitted for FPV Wednesday, you said that's starting back up this week, this
Yeah,
Wednesday.
it'll be probably in the next 10 days tops. It'll be
Oh, okay.
starting back up. So yeah.
What should they do to submit their footage?
They can send a link to the video to fpv@geeksvana.com, and yeah, we'll add it to the list. And we tend to take a clip from it. We will pick a track that's sort of about 3.5 minutes long, and then we'll take clips from the different sections where we can see it matches in with the footage and that type of thing. But we give them a shout out on screen. We put the name on screen, and there's a link in the description to their channel as well. And it's just it's especially the one thing I find with FPV. We have a guy that I've featured a couple of times called Max Air 420, and that guy is a great flyer. And everyone's like, oh, Johnny FPV chasing drifting cars. Well, there's plenty of guys that have been chasing drifting cars and are very good at it, but for a very long time they're just there's so many great FPV channels that have got like 50 subscribers or 100, because that's not what they're chasing. They're enjoying the hobby. They're making those flights because they love it, and those are the people that we love to expose to a wider audience, because then the amount of feedback that I get, especially via email from our audience saying I'd never heard of that guy, he's absolutely fantastic, and that's really the reason we do it.
He's got a friend in the chat as well, Razman FPV. Yeah, Max there. I knew that was going to come out there eventually. That's awesome. So let me welcome in real quick Jessica Linzer, Crystal Justice, and Lord FPV. Real quick, Lord FPV. I did receive the shipping cost for your. He won a Bugs 3
Ooh,
brushless drone on my last live stream. I try to
very
do
cool.
giveaways once a month, and he was the lucky winner. He actually won two of my giveaways, and he actually is over in Serbia. So
Wow.
it's got quite a journey ahead of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. We actually had something sent to us by Kelly over at Ready Set Drone, because we did the pre-show for Spin Up this year. I don't know if you've heard of the show,
Uh-huh.
the meetup Spin Up, and we did the pre-show for that. And he sent me a couple of T-shirts and a Tello drone and a couple of bits and pieces to say thank you for doing the show. And it took about 4.5 months to get here. And when it did get here, we actually thought it had gone missing. And when it did turn up, it had New Zealand postal marks on it. So that thing had really gone round the world and back again to get back over here to the UK.
Shipping over here has just been a complete nightmare as far as anything, drone related.
Yes.
Even within, the lower 48, it's taken, like weeks upon weeks to get your
Mhm.
stuff in. So we've really been feeling it here. I've been having a lot of my buddies have been complaining about how long it's taking to get their stuff.
Indeed. Can I just say hi to a couple of people in the chat as well? Hi, Ray
Absolutely.
Kelly, and hi, Michael Blade. Good to see you. Yes, that is Sean on an FPV channel. What am I doing here? Good to see you
It's
guys.
funny that they said FPV channel because I know I've actually always tried to make my channel like kind of diverse.
Yes,
So I try to just there was a time when I
which
was
it is,
thinking,
which it
am I
is.
going
But
to change the
I
channel to
would
eDrone FPV
I would
or
point you to your wall behind, and that's perhaps why I get the feeling that you might be more FPV led than most things. Because I also can I just say the OCD part of my brain loves how organized that board is behind you.
oh
That
thank
that
you
is that is superb, and I have a lot of respect for that. Because
thank
as you
you
see, I
I'm the
have
same
everything.
way with it.
Like I got the ruler out when I hung these. When I hung these controllers and things like that, and I put this sticker on the wall and things, I'm very precise with those things. I have a lot of respect for your background.
Thank you. I really like your I like the lighting. I like the little
Thank you.
drone sign
Yeah,
there. Is that like neon lights?
yeah. Well, it's basically like really cheap Amazon looking neon. They're actually plastic, and they're just stuck on the wall
Okay.
with a bit of Velcro, basically.
Oh
Really
wow, look at
really
that.
simple to get a good effect, which is with a lot of this background I often trawl things and try and find cheaper ways to make things look quite nice, and that was one of them. They're individual letters that we shipped from Amazon for, like, I think they were $8 each. So
I'll tell you this much. For me personally, I have gotten to points where I'll be flying FPV for a while. I'll be kind of all in, and then every once in a while, I just want to slow down and I just want to
nice.
break out my Mavic Air 2 over here, which you
Yeah,
can see
nice.
he's kind of sitting there all by his lonesome.
Very cool.
And I will definitely just take it out and get some nice cinematic shots and just take a nice little stroll. And it's just a whole different experience going from the balls to the wall, goggles on your face, rush, flying
Yes.
through gaps, trying to hit every little trick and tie it together, to just kind of sitting back and then looking at your screen and just just let me get a little shot over here. It's just a much more relaxed feeling, and actually sometimes I crave that.
Yeah, I could definitely understand. I think the most I try to get more excitement from the point of view of locations. For us camera drone guys, we get more excited with locations. I flew a former nuclear weapons base,
Wow.
with my Parrots and my Mavic Air. It's a good while ago now. It's just over a year ago, and that was very exciting. That got the sort of heart racing, trying to think, how can I get the best shots of this place and that type of thing. But yeah, I haven't been across to the as I say, to the other side, as it were, with the FPV yet. So I haven't got my heart pumping quite as much as that.
I've started to kind of wonder, and let us know down in the chat as well if you guys have thought about this or if it has ever crossed your mind. But I'm thinking to myself, do you think that there's going to be a day when the camera bird GPS drones are going to become obsolete because with the push of the technology of the Cinewhoops and the different things we're doing, and you can even add GPS to them now for
Yeah,
return to home rescue. I'm like, if we get these FPV cinematic drones so good to the point where do we even need
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that the hybrid stuff is certainly going to start with the DJI FPV drone. It's very
Okay.
much going to be on the cinematic on the DJI camera drone side of that hybrid fence. But I think that will be the first small move to it. But also, if you look at the way that regulation is moving around the world, and they're almost regulators seem to be looking at how the machine itself can be can follow the regulations, whether you want to or not. So I think there is going to be essentially. I think you are, yes, very much going to have the hybrid drones in the future, and not necessarily FPV or camera drones on the cinematic side of things. And then I think you're just going to have your selfie drones and that sort of thing with your, you can have these little drones that you throw in the air and that are effectively going to 100% fly themselves, and capture shots and capture video, etc., and that type of thing. So I think in 5 years it'll be a very different marketplace.
That's what I'm thinking too. And I asked myself, I'm like, okay, for let's just say the Mavic Air 2 for $700-800, what kind of a Cinewoop rig could I get myself to
Yeah,
where can I really get like this kind of almost those same shots? The only shot that you can't quite get yet that I've seen, unless you have multiple cameras, which I'm sure you could, but I think it would be more trouble than it's worth, is the straight down shot of the camera bird. That is a almost like an iconic shot,
yes,
a dead giveaway to say, okay, this
100%.
is
Yeah,
not FPV drone. This is a GPS
yes.
camera drone.
Unless you're a very skilled 3D flyer, of course, then very skilled.
Zoe FPV could probably do
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
But man, I'm so fortunate and happy that the hobby has taken off like it has, and the support that we have now, the community, everything that's been like fundamentally built up throughout the years. Someone getting into the hobby now has just had so many resources and
Mhm.
learning tools. Whereas when I got into the hobby, there wasn't really that much information out there like there is now. And I
Absolutely.
had to do a lot of research, a lot of digging, just, yeah,
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of,
Which
a
is
lot
which
of
is which is
resources out
actually, I
there.
mean, that's one of the reasons why Geeksvana exists, is because as a hobbyist, I found it outside of my flying club, I found it difficult to translate what the regulation means to what I can actually do. So we try to do videos like what our most recent one is, for UK hobbyists who want to fly at night, and it's actually okay. Here's the regulation, and now here are 7 tips on actually how you do it. So and that kind of thing didn't really exist when I was a hobbyist, and first starting out. And that's the kind of content that we've tried to build, as well as to give people actual practical advice on how to capture the shot, or how to fly your drone within that kind of thing. I mean, and it can be some bizarre subjects like, can you fly your drone from your garden, which will sound bizarre to some US flyers, but why is that even a question? But actually, here in the UK, with regulations that have changed recently, that's only recently been possible with the right size drone. And yeah, so it's giving that sort of practical advice, and actually, showing someone how you can fly, not just reading out, this regulation part 124 says XYZ. It's actually, how does that work in practice?
It reminds me the way that Ken Heron over here tries to educate the U.S. about the FAA. It seems like you're kind of doing a similar
Yeah,
um, uh, goal, should I say, over on your side. And I
yeah,
think it's
it has been
amazing
like
that
that
you're you're
recently.
you're you're bringing that information out on a platform where I feel you're going to reach more people
Yes.
than your traditional just in the
Indeed. I mean,
newspaper type thing.
we exactly. We do also cover the states, and in actual fact, other countries. We had
Hmm.
last week or just the week before, we had Vic Moss on a few days after he managed to get himself onto the Drone Advisory Committee, and we it's actually interesting, because that's one of the times where the information that my FPV side of my audience gave me made that a little bit more of had a bit more of an edge to the interview, because I was able to ask things. I was able to tell him the problems I have with there not being an FPV person on the Drone Advisory Committee in the FAA DAC, and really express to him what some of my FPV audience were saying from the point of view of the issues that they have with the hobby and their fears for the hobby in the future as well. So, so that again, that's been an interesting part of having that crossover of the audience, because it develops my own sort of thought process as a journalist when I'm approaching these interviews as well.
Yeah, and you kind of become like the voice in between that kind of can make it more relatable to our audience and to
Yeah,
your
I hope so.
audience, to where you can kind of relay the information in a way that they can
Yeah.
understand.
Indeed. I mean, our audience analytics are pretty much split 50-50 US UK, and I think it's something like 40% US, 40% UK, and then the 20% is Canada, and all over Europe and all over the world, as Australia, etc., as we always get. But it's interesting that when we have videos that are focused on either side of the pond, the other side of the pond will always comment on them as well, as far as what their feedback is from the UK regulation side of things. Like we've had a lot of UK regulation videos on the channel recently because the laws have all just changed,
Right.
but we're getting a lot of feedback from US flyers as far as how they feel about those rules and which ones they'd like to see in the States, which ones they feel are actually still too prohibitive, and that type of thing. So again, it gets that sort of international conversation going, and it reminds us that we're all one hobby, whether we're in England, in London, or in Texas.
Absolutely. Welcome in real quick, Baduga FPV. Let's see, RC Funds and RC Crazy. Eric, welcome in tonight. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Greatly appreciate all your support. And if you could please smash that like button, it helps out a ton. And make sure you show Sean from Geeksvana some love. Maybe after the stream, head on over there and hit a subscribe. He is staying up, past 1 a.m. over there.
I'm always up at this time, unfortunately. So yeah,
to come and hang out with us tonight. So make sure you show him some love.
Thank you.
And I guess right now, maybe that'd be a good time to just roll into the news. I feel like you got some good news for us tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's really one of the main focuses that for Geeksvana in the last few weeks. It's been rolling on for a good year and a bit now, but it's become very focused. And I apologise to my US viewers for quite so many UK focused videos recently.
No, that's fine.
But we've actually just had a complete sea change in our regulations. We've also, of course, the UK has come out of the European Union, so we're no longer part of that. With obviously I suppose the headline word that most international people understand is Brexit. So Brexit has now happened. So we are a standalone country once again.
We will be right back with the news from Sean Hickey from Geeksvana. All right, there we go.
We like that little graphic.
Yeah, I figured I'd add a little news right there, and
Nice.
The floor is all yours.
Thank you, sir. But yes, we've had it's been an interesting time where basically our regulations have changed completely, and previously to December 31st, UK drone flyers, hobbyist flyers, we actually couldn't fly in built-up areas. So no matter what the airspace was, if it was deemed to be an area which was either substantially residential, industrial, that type of thing, you couldn't fly your hobbyist drone in there, whether it's FPV, whatever the weight, whether it's GPS, etc. It didn't matter. But since the 31st of December, everything's changed, and one of the greatest changes, without boring your audience with everything that's changed, is the sub 250 gram drones have pretty much been allowed free use of so much more airspace, and we're now allowed to fly things like the Mini 2 over people. So in congested areas, which is very exciting for an awful lot of UK flyers. It's great to see that our regulator, the CAA, have said that these little drones don't represent a problem. And they've also given some special consideration to the FPV hobby and released a special authorization allowing them to fly in certain previously restricted airspace as well. So it's pretty exciting, isn't it?
I would say, I think the future of FPV is going to be sub 250 gram. There's going to be a lot of people that are not going to want to be bothered with having to go through the process of getting the transponder, getting the broadcaster, and do the sub 250, and they don't even have to worry about it here anyway.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think it's the remote ID side of things. Although everyone calls it the final rule, I don't think it's the final rule yet, and I think there's going to be some sort of chicanes for US flyers to navigate. We've got remote ID, which will be coming in for the professional side of drones at the end of this year, and then by the end of 2022 for everybody else. So we're soon going to be finding out what kind of remote ID restrictions that we're going to be flying under, which is going to be very interesting. But yeah, I agree with you. I actually think the sub 250 gram area is going to be a growth area internationally and on the GPS side of things as well. Frankly, I think we're going to see more and more small lightweight drones come out. I would say the one that I'm most excited about would probably be a sub 250 GPS release from Sony, which obviously we've seen their huge Air Peak drone that they've recently announced, but I think we're going to see some consumer stuff from them as well, which is going to be very exciting. But yeah, I agree with you. The sub 250 mark is certainly going to be the growth industry.
Now, as far as my 5-inch quads, I'm still going to fly my FPV over 250. It doesn't sound to me that paying $50 to put a broadcaster on my already heavy quads as it is, to be able to fly illegally to do the remote ID is gonna really, it's not gonna stop me, and it's probably not gonna stop a lot of other people either. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this is one of my biggest problems with regulation and the FPV side of things is that regulators often look at the FPV hobby as a rebellious child, and we need to control these FPV flyers, even though of course the safety record is absolutely amazing in the FPV and wider RC hobby. And it frustrates me because they want everybody to follow the rules. I'm personally a believer in the drone regulations, especially the newer ones which are coming here in the UK, but there's this fence that every FPV flyer that even wants to follow the rules bounces off, which is the spotter side of things. And I think that if you're going to continue to insist that every FPV flight is illegal without a spotter, then FPV flyers can't go any further into the regulations. Does that make sense? You can't bring people into regulation when the very first thing they're doing is already breaking the rules. What does it matter what the other regulations are?
Absolutely.
And I think that's very frustrating. That's one of the things that I put to Vic Moss of the DAC when he came on for his interview. And I did say that I feel like it is absurd of regulators to keep on insisting on something that they know isn't being followed, and therefore not criminalizes but outlaws a huge part of the drone hobby, basically the FPV side of things. And it needs to be changed, because you can't really argue that situational awareness isn't there with someone that's wearing goggles that especially when they're flying under tree line height and that type of thing. So yeah, I hope that will change. Vic Moss did actually say there was some news coming down the pipe regarding that side of things, so I'm hoping that there'll be something positive that comes from the FAA and over here on this side as well. But yeah, it's certainly frustrating.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like anybody that wants to fly FPV the way it's written now, if you go fly by yourself, you're flying illegally.
Yeah,
and, I mean, it's impossible.
And then it doesn't matter.
It have goggles on.
Yeah, and then you're talking to the FPV audience about remote ID and these separate modules that you're going to be able to fit, and isn't it great, and that type of thing. And I would look at that if every flight I took as a GPS camera drone flight was automatically illegal, then why am I going to be bothered about remote ID? Why am I bothered about all these other regulations when you're outlawing me from the very first step that I take every day when I go out to enjoy my hobby? And I also find it ironic because, an FPV pilot with goggles on, as we were saying earlier, it's a higher benchmark to get into that hobby. So therefore the skill level is higher, and there is situational awareness there because of course they're looking straight at the camera or the quad. But then of course so many camera drone flyers don't take their eyes off their phone at the bottom of the controller or their huge tablet that they put over the controller. So they're technically flying illegally as well, because they're not looking at the drone and keeping the drone in line of sight and all that sort of business. But yet it's the FPV crowd that get tarnished with the brush.
Yeah, and if getting these transponders, if getting these new regulations, if getting the technology even better when it comes to tracking and flying safely, if that's going to get us to the point where we can fly beyond visual line of sight, I think that's the ultimate goal that the hobbyist and the 107 is really looking for.
Yeah, to me, and when you look at the remote ID and the updated regulations and the way that they word visual line of sight, that the drone operator, the FPV flyer, has to keep the drone within visual line of sight. To me, that necessarily shouldn't be you're looking at the drone, but that actually, if there's a problem, you can flip your goggles up, which of course FPV flyers do. They flip their goggles up. Oh, there's the drone. Okay, I'm going to bring it back now, and goggles back on it. Or if they're worried that there's people coming into the park behind them, they can flip the goggles up and have a quick look and that type of thing. So I think that yes, there could be an argument from the point of view of how far that drone can travel from the person. So therefore, keeping it in line of sight from that point of view, so that almost that line of sight is possible, but not always. But not always 100% obligatory, because like I say, us camera drone flyers, we're often staring at our screens, and the disorientation between staring at the screen and looking up at the drone and backwards and forwards can cause even more problems. So yeah, I just see that as a very sort of an unfair part of it. And if you want FPV flyers to embrace remote ID, if you want FPV flyers to embrace future regulations, you need to deal with that one issue, that fence that's between them now, basically.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with the FAA wanting things to be safe. Regulation is going to happen.
It is
anything
safe.
that can cause bodily harm or injury,
Yeah.
we're going to see regulation. And a drone can definitely cause body harm and injury and damage to public property. So
Exactly.
I get it. I want to welcome in Treetop Flyer, Michael McReynolds, Mr. Crowley, and his drone.
Hey,
Welcome
Sean.
in, guys. Thanks so much for coming in. Greatly appreciate the support. And like Treetop said, you can't ride your bike everywhere you want. You can't carry your gun in places. Exactly. Drones are going to be no different. They're going to be regulated. They have to be, because they can cause bodily harm and property damage.
Yes, yeah, and in actual fact, I think that there's been a lot of focus in the last 12 months, especially on remote ID and what that will do to the hobby. But I think actually the main issue coming around the corner is UTM, and actually how they're going to have to unify all air traffic, drones, planes, etc., to be able to open it up for the beyond visual line of sight commercial side of things, so delivery drones and pipeline inspections, etc., and that type of thing. That's where I think we're going to have more issues as far as restricting our rights to fly. But thankfully, that should be a good few years away.
Well, I've seen a lot of people excited about drone delivery, and I've seen a lot of people not excited about drone delivery. Being able to select 30-minute shipping is pretty impressive. I mean, to be able to go on Amazon and pick out what you want and hit 30-minute shipping, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
I've seen like a lot more videos coming out of these robots that are driving around now that are carrying packages.
Yeah.
So then it goes to, okay, well, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a bunch of robots driving around to bring in your packages, or would you rather have some drones? I feel like the drones, it's going to be less clutter, less things on the street. It's already cluttered with the traffic and everything. So I see why they want to go that route when it comes to the delivery.
Yeah, I think though that there are smart cities already popping up around the world, especially in China, where they are completely Bluetoothing the entire city so that they can bring drone delivery integration into things very quickly. But I think the mass side of drone delivery is going to take a very long time to establish, and I think it's very much going to be an urban thing for a very long time before anybody even a few miles outside of a town is going to see that happening, just from a straight technology and safety and practicality point of view as well. But there was actually a test last year in Houston of the little robot trucks, and these things are quite small. You can actually fit two alongside each other in a standard lane, and they basically, it was Walmart and a couple of the pizza companies, or actually was it Greens, but it was one of the grocery stores and a couple of the pizza companies that trialed it first. And you would go on the app, place your order, and these little things have sort of gull wing doors, and they'll load an order on each side. Exactly, and they'll load an order on each side, and you'll actually get a little vibration on your phone, and the app will tell you that the truck is close. So you go outside and wait for it, and there's a little PIN number you push in, and it opens the door, and you pull out your pizza or you pull out your groceries, and you carry on, and the little truck carries on to its next delivery. That to me is much more practical and works within the ecosystem that we all live within already. Whereas with drone delivery, there are so many barriers to get over, and I think as well, we're due a very big delay in drone delivery because it's autonomous. If you look at the self-driving cars and the holdups that they've had with, unfortunately, tragic circumstances where people have been killed, where there have been sort of black spots in the software and that type of thing, and other crashes that have happened, that's delayed the self-driving car an awful lot. And I think that's going to happen at some point with drones as well. At some point when they try these things on a larger scale, we're going to have a couple of accidents that happen, and these things are going to drop out the sky and fall in people's gardens or something, and that will then delay it from an insurance point of view. They'll say, okay, well, we need to see another 1,000 flights in test without any accidents before we let you out again, and that type of thing. So I think it's an awful. It's still a long way away to see it happening regularly, but unfortunately, we're having to get used to the regulation side of it to allow all that to happen pretty much now, which is frustrating for the hobby.
I was pleasantly surprised that the FAA, they actually listened to the comments and they actually responded to the comments. I'm gonna be honest with you, when they talked about that comment period and they talked about everybody leaving a comment and the whole community was in uproar, I honestly thought that it's not going to matter. Our comments aren't going to matter. They're going to do what they want to do. They're not going to care what we have to say. But quite the opposite thing happened. The comments were responded to, and a lot of the proposed regulations in the beginning were changed in a good way.
Although
does your government over there have a similar process for this type of regulation?
Yes and no.
Do they respond the same?
Yes and no, and in actual fact, they surprised us a lot with things that we would never have asked for, like essentially, deregulating an awful lot of the sub 250 ground flights and allowing it to fly over people and that type of thing. We didn't expect that, and obviously, yes or no. I'm very pro regulation. I'm very pro regulator, and some of the work that the FAA and CAA have done. I still have my cynical hat on as a journalist, from the point of view that I think that if they'd announced what they're going to announce now back then, everyone would have been up in arms at it. But actually, if you put out something even worse and then you pull back 50%, then everyone accepts that, if that makes sense. And so I'm slightly suspicious from that point of view. I'm also suspicious from the point of view of Bluetooth. Being the transmitter, because of course they're talking about these modules preventing the aircraft from being able to fly unless they're active, and that concerns me because we've got things like Bluetooth geofencing around the corner and that type of thing. So I'm concerned. There are things within it that concern me, but overall, yes, it was a lot better. But as I say, I'm suspicious that they made things really in our faces, and then they went back 50% so that we'd accept it, essentially.
That's been a lot of speculated over here as well, that basically the FAA threw everything at the wall to see what was going to stick, what could they kind of push through with good reason, and what was going to fall off and what was just going to be considered like a death to the hobby, because a lot of the initial proposed regulations would have destroyed FPV for good. As far as people that were willing to, cooperate and follow the rules, because we all know there's a there's a percentage out there of people that are just going to do what they want,
Yeah,
and they're not going to listen to the regulations, and they'll be that's they're doing that at their own risk, obviously. But we know that those kind of people are out there. So I felt like as a government entity, if you want people to comply, if you want people to do the right thing, you got to be fair about it, and you can't just destroy a hobby and say, okay, well, this is what you get, you know.
absolutely, exactly. And it's going to be an interesting few years, that's for sure.
And that's just it. We have time, so that's the great news. We do have some time for some things to hopefully get changed. I don't know
Yeah.
if you know
We've
about
also
race day
got time for
quads.
innovation as well, of course, because innovation is going to, the things that we think now, and we think, okay, how do we make these chips? How do we make these modules work? And that type of thing. If you think
Yes.
about companies working on that for the next 18 months, and of course, there are FPV focused companies that are going to be very vested in ensuring that the hobby continues. They've got 18 months to be able to innovate some very cool products to make it work. So I also think that once remote ID comes in, not that it won't be as big a deal, but I think it will be easier to integrate into FPV than it would if we had to do it today, basically.
Oh yeah, and with 2 years, I mean, we've seen how much technology changes
Yeah,
in 2 years in
a
our
minute.
hobby.
Yeah,
So 2 years, I would be willing to see, hoping to see a lightweight broadcast module that is inexpensive, durable,
yes,
and lightweight that we can put on our builds. That's not going to be a huge problem. Maybe like 2 or 3 wires to solder on, something easy, because the easier they make it for people to comply, the more comply you're going to get. The
yes.
harder you make it, the less comply you're going to get, right?
Exactly. I mean, non-compliance is, of course, it is it's a difficult subject, but it is sometimes a route to activism, and I think the problem is that the drone hobby is still quite disjointed, and it's very difficult to get everybody behind one message. I know you're about to talk about race day quads and the action that they're looking to take and that type of thing, which is probably one of the only truly organized sort of actions that we've really seen, that sounds like it might go anywhere. So more of that would be wonderful.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up if people didn't know already. But Tyler from Race Day Quads and his attorneys, as far as the latest information I was able to find, are still moving forward with the lawsuit, with the civil suit against the FAA for the well, before the laws that were put into writing that they're going to carry out in a couple years. They are actually going to be fighting what was written in that 420 some odd page document. So
Yeah,
I can't say that I'm not excited about that. I feel like, well, hey, if we can get less regulation passed and maybe a little bit more leniency towards some of
yeah,
the perks
yeah.
that you were talking about, I mean, how amazing would that be if the FAA would adopt some of the flying around people and some of the beyond line of sight with the follow me drones? I mean, I think that with the way the technology is,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just don't see why we can't do that over here as well.
No, indeed, yeah, and that was one of the one of the small parts of a regulation, but actually it helps a lot of camera drone flyers out, just to say that actually if your drone is within 50 meters of you, it can go out of line of sight as long as it's in a follow me mode, which I think is it does help people get those shots that they want to get and enjoy the hobby a little bit more, and it's something that we all do already, but it's nice that it's in the regulation now, so we're protected when we carry that out, basically, so that you don't get a law enforcement officer saying, oh, you've done this and it's technically out of line of sight. So yeah, it's good to see those kind of things. I think the one thing we have to remember, though, is that the cake of the drone industry in the next 30 years is going to be filled. FPV and camera drones is going to be a very small slice of that cake. The commercial side of things is growing and growing and growing, and therefore we're going to see more regulation which favors them. And if it wasn't for the fact of that growing side of things, we wouldn't have remote ID or really as much focus on regulation as we're seeing in the drone world. And unfortunately, that's going to continue, and it's going to be an issue for the next 10 years at least.
It feels like skateboarding all over again, really, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah,
Yeah, I used to do the skateboard thing, and they would run us off of every, bank, curb, parking lot we tried to go to, and then we went to the city, and we went to our political speakers, and we said, please, we need a skate park. We need a skate park. We have kids that just want to skate. They're not trying to hurt anybody. I would love to see the same thing with FPV. Like, can't we have like FPV parks where we take maybe some objects and some cool little things that we can make little parks. I know.
I suppose the issue that I have, and again, it's where I feel like we get the difference between motorbikes and cars. That yes, the GPS flyers, and I'm a GPS flyer. I do feel like we need good regulation, because you can just go down to Best Buy, grab one of these things, and put it in the air in 10 seconds. Often uncalibrated and everything else like that. Some of the stories of some hobbyists on their first flights scares me. You don't get that on the side of FPV, and I suppose that there is. I'm very sympathetic, whilst being very respectful of the regulations. I'm very sympathetic to the side of things that actually, why do you even need to restrict it to areas that are good for FPVing? Because of course, part of FPV is the bandos and things like that, and finding these unique sites to fly. That's part of the buzz of the hobby, and there hasn't been the issue from a safety point of view. So it's a very difficult sort of couple of plates to keep spinning at the same time, and I can see both sides of the coin, but I feel like it's the RC hobby, the RC flying hobby in general, and FPV that are getting to suffer for things that are probably happening more in the GPS side of things, basically. So yeah, it's very difficult.
And I mean, it's not like we're just going to be seeing remote ID for drones. I mean, you're going to see this on fixed wing aircraft. You're going to see this on helicopters. I mean, anything RC that's in the air that's over 250 grams.
When we launched our drone registration scheme here in the UK, it's actually called the Drone and Model Aircraft Registration and Education Scheme. So, bang! This the model aircraft hobby, which has been going for decades in the UK, with an exceptionally safe record, exceptionally safe history, is now suddenly all tied up within the registration side of things. That shocked me a little bit when they came out with that over here in the UK, and that they piled us all into the same little pile. And as I say, it felt like suddenly the motorbike guys were being told to do the same as us car drivers, and it's just not a practical thing or a fair thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A right now, guys. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask Sean or myself or someone in the chat, Q&A is open now, guys. Please feel free to put your questions down there. I feel that Treetop Flyer has been coming up with some good questions here. He says, what civil liberty do you think you're defending? I've yet to hear any compelling need.
Absolutely. Hi, Treetop Flyer. Treetop Flyer has commented on a lot of my videos over the months as well, and it's one of those voices that which I was explaining at the beginning of this stream that I enjoy hearing, because I like hearing different voices that say, "Hang on a minute, what about this? What about that?" Look at this from this point of view, and I really enjoy having those debates and having my eyes open to that side of things as well. And there's also, of course, the other side of things, which is the cultural difference. You have to remember, over here in the UK, we're within a geographical size of, I think it's something like 1/5 the size of Texas is the entire UK. So our geography is very different, our culture is very different. We don't have the right to bear arms and that type of thing, etc. So we are quite a regulated country already, so regulation to us kind of comes a little bit more second nature, following the rules. I know there'll be other UK watchers going, "No, we're free," but it is a fact. And then, of course, you have the cultural side of America, which is much more based on the side of being a much more freedom-based culture. So it's also interesting when we have the discussions about regulations on Geeksvana, because the UK audience will be saying, "Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, how do I follow it?" And the US guys will be saying, "No, we don't need that. Why do we need that? That's taking away some of our liberties, etc." And it's interesting seeing those two cultures mashed together as well sometimes.
Well, there you go. So
Chuck It FPV would like to know what kind of hemorrhoid cream you use.
Oh yeah, I was going to get to that one, but first I was getting to Tommy G over here with the remote ID needed on a large enough kite. You may be right on that, buddy. If it's in the air, doesn't matter if it's got motors or propellers. It's in the air.
I would be controversial and argue that you would probably need it as soon as Amazon decide they want to fly kites.
Yeah. And Preparation H is probably my go-to, I guess. There, Chuck It FPV.
Good international choice there. Yeah.
That's the only thing that came off my mind was Preparation H. Look at that. Oh,
effective
yeah,
marketing,
absolutely.
they call that, don't they?
That's good stuff. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I would love to see things kind of progress towards working together versus the restrictions just keep piling on, and forcing more people out of the hobby, because I feel that like that's what's already starting to happen. And I don't want to see it happen again. So the fact that they listen to the comments, to me, is a huge win. It's a huge win.
Yeah,
it shows that they're willing to negotiate.
But you do have to be careful because when you're talking about the FPV hobby and the model flying hobby, the heli flyers, etc., who build their machines, you are talking about stifling innovation, and you're talking about stifling the engineers of tomorrow. So many autobiographies of very famous astronauts, engineers, tech experts, etc. When you look back to their childhood, and they're like, "Oh, and I built an FPV quad, or I built a model heli, and that gave me experience, and that got me into the buzz of it, and that type of thing." And the problem is, if you keep mounting up the things that the hoops that you have to jump through to be able to enter a hobby, then you do start to exclude more and more people, sadly. And I don't want to see it get to a point where we stifle innovation. I think that would be the shame, where we miss out on people becoming engineers or getting a buzz for building things and taking things apart, etc. Because as youngsters, they can't get into the hobby that easily.
Well, there you go. And we all know that these rules, they're going to be coming in some form, way, shape, or form. So we're prepared for it, but we do have some time to prepare.
We do.
So that's a good.
Which is kind of that's kind of the way that we look at it as well. And I've got a video coming out once I work out the ending of it, because it has to be very carefully worded, which talks about drone regulation and that type of thing, on the point of view, of course, I don't like drone regulation, but I suppose I accept it. There are a lot of drone regulations that I do like, actually, but overall, of course, I would love there to be a situation where I can just pick up my drone, walk outside my house, and fly it how I want to fly it, as long as I stay safe and be trusted. Right. Be trusted enough to do that. But actually, there has to be a level of acceptance. And then as you say, the next layer of that is preparing for it, and trying to fly as free as we can within those new rules.
Absolutely. And so guys, make sure you check out Geeksvana for the latest news, drone news, over in the UK, over in the US. He's covering all over, and he's going through great detail. And I feel like you almost probably have you almost have like a responsibility to just get that news out there, and really just get it out to the public, so you can keep people educated this is ever changing so fast, guys. This is rapidly changing. We're getting new laws and rules all over the globe right now. So what better way to tune in and be able to keep up with this than check out Geeksvana.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk more also about what you were talking about earlier, when you said that the did you said your local government or someone wanted to use some of your videos that you had done and
Oh yeah,
actually
no, just
promote them?
it was an interesting thing where we actually had some of our videos on UK drone regulations have been retweeted by UK police forces, and in fact, one police force retweeted and said, if you're confused about the new UK drone regulations, go watch Geeksvana, Mr. MPW, and another channel. And yeah, no,
Very nice.
I enjoy that. Obviously, it's great to have that, but there's the other side of that. That there's part of my audience that'll be like, I'm not going to watch him anymore because the police like him. So it's always trying to strike that balance of giving the education without sounding like the man, if that makes sense.
I definitely know where you're coming from on that.
Yeah.
And another thing that really drew me to your channel, and I think this is a huge, is very important, and I really do give you a lot of credit for what you did, was when you stuck up for the micro drone 4.0
Yes.
community of evidently there was quite a few people that had been on board to this project.
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, it's something which has developed fairly rapidly over the last couple of years. Essentially, there's a crowdfunding campaign that's launched a couple of drones now, which haven't been that good. They went for their fourth edition, the Microdrone 4.0, and they were looking for around $75,000 to be able to take this drone into production. And the promo video promised 12 megapixel sensor, a handheld, literally a little micro drone in the palm of your hand that can hover and would be better than a DJI Spark and all this sort of thing for under $200 and give you Inspire type quality footage. And they raised in total something like $2.5 million. So they wanted 75,000, they got $2.5 million, and they also promised delivery early in 2019, and they're actually now still not even in full production. So we've been trying to work with the backers of that campaign to get them refunds, and we had the owner of the campaign on twice for interviews, which got more and more hostile as it went on. And if you follow at Geeksvana on Twitter, you can see something like a 14-day battle that we've been having with the CEO of the company, basically calling him to account on some of the claims that he's making, and actually and actually throwing some facts back at him, fact checking him. But we're actually fact checking him with his own videos. So he'll claim something. We'll say, actually, this is a video filmed by you at the CES 2020 or 2019, and it says the opposite to what you're now saying. So, which is it? The video that you recorded? Or because our issue is that crowdfunding works and fails sometimes. When you back a crowdfunding campaign, you're not getting, it isn't like buying a retail product. You don't get that level of protection. But the guy has misled people into buying it because they've changed from a 12 megapixel to 5 megapixel sensor. They've changed the flight time. They've changed the weight of the drone. Exactly. And actually the product is now completely irrelevant. But we've actually been helping individual backers to gain refunds through the court system. So we've been helping them with legal action, and he's been settling every single case which has come up. It's been dozens now. So we've helped all of those people get refunds. And we
If you
also,
wouldn't mind me asking, and
yeah,
this could be completely like an estimate, but how much money did this guy raise?
it was something like $2.5 million.
$2.5 million for a
Here
5 megapixel
Yeah,
micro drone.
yeah, which was ready for production, which was production ready, and it still isn't production ready. We actually we opened a campaign to have backers email us with their contribution number and their name and address, and we wrote a letter to Indiegogo, who are the crowdfunding platform, to ask them to force the campaign from production back to prototype, because he always claimed that in production he can't offer refunds because of the Indiegogo terms and conditions. And actually the campaign has now been forced back to prototype, and he's now refusing refunds for other spurious reasons, making up new reasons. But every time we're trying to keep on top of it from the point of view that every time he comes up with excuses, every time he doesn't give the right kind of feedback to backers, we're on top of him. One of the points where this became very personal for me was the Indiegogo page, the crowdfunding page, has a comment section, and one of the comments was actually somebody asking for a refund because they were stood in, it was a US backer, and he was stood in a line for a food bank. And he was saying, I've lost my job, my wife's lost their job, we've got kids. That $350 would do so much. I mean, we've all been in a situation in our lives where $350 would be like winning the lottery, frankly. We've all been in those situations personally. And it was a plea on there. And he could have got the guy to sign a non-disclosure agreement, not to tell anybody else that he got a refund. He could have done so many things to help that guy out. Instead, the very next comment he put was he had a contest for the 10,000th complaint would win a t-shirt. That was literally the next comment. So there's, and that was the point where things became a little bit more personal for me. And also, several of the backers are channel members of Geeksvana now, that type of thing. And I know them very well. People like Mike Drennan, etc. That I'm pleased that they call me a friend now. So for me, this is about my friends as well, not just a list of nameless backers, faceless backers. So yes, it's one of the ones that's got me very animated on the channel over the last 12 months.
I gotta thank you. I mean, thank gosh there's people out there like yourself that are going to fight and battle, for people who have been wronged in these GoFundMe's and these, these scams. I'm just gonna say it. These scams.
Yeah, exactly, and it is now within the realms of a scam, most certainly. But crowdfunding campaigns fail. If this guy had turned around to his audience and said, okay, this isn't working out, this has gone wrong for us, or that's gone wrong for us, I'm really sorry, I absolutely guarantee you this group of backers, they're amazing people. They would have accepted that. They know their investment wasn't guaranteed. It's the fact that they were misled, and now he keeps on lying and lying and lying to back up those misleading statements, and he keeps going further and further down his own little rabbit hole, frankly. To the point where we've had screaming conversations with each other on mobile phones and things where we're debating things and that type of thing. And he threatens us with legal action about 3 times a month at the moment. And I'm sort of exactly my view on it is actually, yes, please take legal action. And I've said that publicly to him as well. Vernon, please take legal action, because then we'll have all of this in a public forum. Let's get this in court.
That's what I was going to say. Is there any way that he could be upheld to a standard on the legal side of things?
Well, the problem is now he's in this sort of drift stage where no one really knows exactly, which is why we wrote the letter to Indiegogo to say you have the power to go in and put sanctions on this project and say, if you don't produce something within 3 months, you must start giving refunds and XYZ. So the first thing they've done is moved it to prototype. So I hope behind the scenes there's been even more that's happened between them. And once it does fail, that's when he could start seeing some real issues, not because it failed, because businesses fail, but because of the misleading side of things, and because he has lied to people for such a long time. Then that's where, yes, he could get himself in a lot of hot water. I think what he banked on was the fact that the drone itself was just under $200, and then sold controllers and batteries. So a lot of people have got $300 or $400 in it. But I think he was hoping that the level was at a price point that individually people would just walk away. And of course, of the 16,000 backers, thousands of backers have just walked away and said, I'm just going to move on with my life. But actually, he has a nucleus of several thousand backers who are angry, not because of the money, but they're angry because they've been misled and because he thinks he can keep getting away with it. And that's where I think he's kind of crossed the line this time, that he's almost picked on the wrong group of backers. And there is that nucleus of backers that I think will follow this through to any legal means that they can.
Well, that's what really impressed me, was when I saw the way that you kind of spoke up for the community on that. Yeah. And basically, went to go hold him accountable. I said, "Man, this guy's really doing the right things, and he's trying to,
we try
for the people, and that's awesome, man. I give you a lot of props for that, because that's not even your battle. I mean, did you even have anything in with the micro yourself?
No. It was actually another channel, Droning On, Ash at Droning On, who told me about it, and he did a video on it, and he chatted to me about it, and then we did the first interview, and we had so many backers approach us and say he's lying. the things he's telling in the interview are lies. That we then did a follow-up interview to push him harder, yeah, it sort of grew from there. But we've tried to be a little bit tricky with some of it. Like he started banning people on the comments page because they were complaining so much and that type of thing. So we actually did a video called "The Backers' Voices," where it was literally clips of backers giving their experience of how they feel they were misled and the service that they've received from Vernon, the microdrone company. And we put that out, and so it's several of the backers' voices. It's actually called "The Backers' Voices," just so their experience can be put out there, because we felt like he was trying to stifle what they were saying, and he's always trying to reword what people are saying as well, which is it's just icky, frankly.
And it seems like there's always an excuse of why he can't refund the money, and it's always a constant changing. Like it's never everything he does, it changes.
Yes,
so
exactly.
By constantly changing it and changing the wording and changing, what he's perceiving it to be, this project, he can just keep people in the loop and just keep people guessing. Like, well, is it going to go to production? Is it not going to go to production?
Yeah.
Have we hit a snag? Have we changed the whole design of the thing? Now, if you had to put a price on it for you yourself, what do you think, honestly, this micro drone, as it stands, as he's put out there, what it's going to have, all the specifications, what do you think this thing's really worth?
Well, that's the problem, because and that's one of the things I said in the second interview which particularly upset him, where I said, actually, even if you now deliver the drone, it's irrelevant. There are $50 drones that do just the same thing.
My gosh.
That in actual fact do them better, and have been doing them better for a long time. And then I can only imagine how he felt when DJI dropped the first Mini, because for only a few dollars more, you've got this incredible little drone that's completely stabilized and everything else, let alone the Mini 2 with OcuSync 2.0. That must have been his absolute worst nightmare. Exactly. And that's really where that's really where we come from it, that I don't care what he's now going to bring out, because it's going to be so different from the specs that he promised. That,
I mean, so realistically, what you've seen, would you say like maybe $50, $75?
Yeah, I don't know, because the problem is the only footage we've seen of the thing flying, which actually he released some footage to me, which was from the camera. So after the first interview, the huge rows and everything else like that, and coming up for the second interview, he said, right, I'm going to go outside, I'm going to fly the drone, I'm going to show you how amazing it is, I'm going to send you the footage. I said, great. Fantastic, this is amazing. Well, I can play it out, because I then did a live stream where I played out parts of the second interview, so I can play it out during that stream. Fantastic. Literally an hour before the live, he sent the video. An hour before the live stream, he actually sent us some legal letters, etc., banning us from showing that footage, because he realized that the footage was actually terrible. I think he probably sent it to someone that knows what they're talking about, frankly. I said, sorry, you can't have that out there. So our reaction was actually to play the video. We took some legal advice, and because he came into the live chat and he was talking about that video and saying, hey, I've given you video, and why don't you just admit that the video, because basically I think what he wanted to do was send me video, ban me from using it, and then claim that I've seen video that shows it flying and that I'm withholding it because it's good. I don't want that to show.
He's trying to pass the buck.
Yeah. So then, despite the legal threat, we released the video, which we actually called "The Banned Footage," a very sarcastic title, and which just showed the drone flight. So it's like, if you're going to call us out on it, we're going to put the footage out there, and then I would be happy to stand in front of a judge and explain why I put that out, despite the fact that I was told not to, because you're walking around saying that I've seen footage of it flying, which was amazing, frankly. So it's been a lot of that kind of stuff, but I'm happy to have that battle in the public, and on the channel, because it gets a little bit more exposure for the backers, whereas on the Indiegogo comments page, he can delete comments that he doesn't like, he can ban people, that type of thing, and of course the wider community, the wider audience isn't viewing those comments page. It's a very small section of the internet, whereas perhaps getting it on YouTube channels and getting it covered and that type of thing does help, because in actual fact, Ash from Droning On, who has also done a couple of videos on it, he managed to get it on the BBC. So the BBC actually ran a story on it to talk about how, I think they called it, said, is microdrone for losing height or something like that, sort of
Okay, that's
another
great.
sarcastic title, and talked about the problems. It was a very, very balanced article, and talked about the problems, and that it looked like things were starting to fail there. So it's trying to keep it as wide as possible. I don't focus on, we've been approached by other crowdfunding projects where people are saying, hey, we're having the same problem, but to be fair, the microdrone 4 has taken up so much time, because we have to check everything legally, 3 or 4 times, that it's the only one we're focusing on at the moment.
Well, that's why I really commend you, because it wasn't even your battle to fight, but I feel like you used your channel, and you basically used it as a platform to be able to hold him accountable and say, look, I've got all these people
very animated
over
on
here.
this.
Yeah, I've got all these people over here that you screwed over, basically.
Yeah.
And
But the
they're
biggest,
done. They want their money back.
yeah, the single biggest thing that annoys me is this campaign got 16,500 backers just on the Indiegogo page. Okay, those are 16,500 people that wanted to get into drones. So it is my battle. These are people that wanted to have a little drone to have a bit of fun with, to get some great footage and take some nice photographs of. And he has left them with a feeling about drones that it's all a bit, dark and con manny and scammy, and I hate that. This drone hobby is something that I'm passionate about. It's something I want to protect, and I want to protect people from that kind of person, who is going to take that excitement. You can imagine people going, okay, for $165 or $200, I'm getting this drone. It's going to do this, this, and this, and I'm going to get it in 3 months. I can't wait, and that excitement has turned into delay after delay after delay. And there are people there that then haven't gone on and bought another drone because they haven't bothered. And it breaks my heart that people that wanted to get into the hobby haven't, and they've moved on.
Exactly. And that's why it's such a big deal. Like, I don't know if people just think, oh, well, if it doesn't work out, it's not going to be a big deal. It's not, they're not out that much money. No, it's a huge deal, because now you've given somebody a terrible experience.
Yeah.
Here they are thinking they're going to get this awesome new product.
Yeah.
And then you don't even deliver on that.
Yeah.
And then when it finally comes time to you putting out some specifications, they're nowhere near what you said they were going to be to begin with.
Yeah. It also annoys me because there are some really clever, innovative people in the drone hobby. You look at people like Troy from Quad Standard Labs, who's built a business from nothing and is now going from strength to strength. What if someone like that wants to go onto a crowdfunding page? And who has the experience of putting these things together, that has successful products, and says, I've got this idea for a new FPV product, and I'm going to crowdfund it. There is now this cloud over drone crowdfunding that's going to diminish the audience for that. So again, it's not only hurting people from the hobby and what they want to get into the hobby, it's hurting the commercial side of things and the innovation. And crowdfunding, if it's done correctly, is a great way to as a community bring a product together and get it out there, and to improve it. So yeah, it frustrates me from so many different sides. Sorry to go on about it so much.
No, that was one of the other things that kind of drew me to Geeksvana. And I also wanted to talk also about the fact that you don't run Geeksvana like by yourself, right? Like, you have some help.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all about collaboration. I love working with other drone channels, and I've been very fortunate that some of the other drone channels, people like Ken Heron and Kelly Shaw's over at Ready Set Drone, have been very generous with their time and support and advice and everything else like that. And Ash from Droning On, and other people over the past 12, 14 months, and yeah, so I've had that sort of collaboration side of things very early on, and yeah, we've got a few co-hosts that work with me on the channel. There's Lib, of course, Lib Marie, that you see at the end of each video with the funny little clips that she produces. She's
got one heck of a personality. I mean, she is funny and witty. Yes. Yeah,
and in actual fact, Lib is moving more across from the live shows that we were doing with her. She's going to be doing a lot more in the channel members side of things. She's going to be working over that side of things soon. But then we have Stephen, who is from the Flyby guys. He's on the professional side of things. He runs a very successful company over in Finland. where they do everything from street surveys for the local authorities to he's currently over in Dubai creating drone light shows and that type of thing, all the way through to, we have people who are ex regulator employees, CAA employees that help on the channel, and it brings a different dynamic to things. Basically, I try to bring different sides of things, of the hobby to the audience, and therefore have co-hosts that know what they're talking about on that side of things as well. I try not to act as if I know everything, basically.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, collaboration. I'm actually a part of the. Obviously, I have my channel here, eDrone, but I'm also a part of another collaboration of FPV community called the FPV Noob Tube.
Awesome.
And kind of similar to what you do, we have multiple people involved that all contribute, and it really is nice to be able to come together on the platform and be able
Yeah.
to offer a little bit more, a little bit more dynamic when it comes to like you said, the collaborations, bringing great minds together and making great things happen.
I love talking about drones. So people want to come on my channel and talk about drones and help the channel grow, and add an extra dimension to the expertise and knowledge that's on the channel. I'm all up for that. Frankly, it's a great thing. We've got a thing running at the moment called Geeksvana Takeover, where we are channels with less than 2,000 subscribers can submit videos, and we're playing those out on the channel and sending people across to with a link in the description across to discover these people. So we're trying to shine a spotlight on creators that are even smaller than us. I mean, we're Geeksvana is still a small channel, but we're trying to help even smaller creators basically to get a bit of exposure as well, because we're lucky to have a little bit of traffic going through the channel at the moment. But can Geeksvana power loop? No.
Now you've got a goal, right? Now you've got a goal.
That is the real question. 100%. Can Geeksvana power loop? No. I will.
That's okay.
Any FPV flight that I was that I were to take right now, I would be delighted if it lasted 3 seconds.
And and when you get started, that's really how it is. I mean, it is when you
I just have
first
to
get
clarify,
used to it.
sorry. I just have to clarify, if my girlfriend's listening, I'm talking about flying drones, not the other thing. Okay.
When you're used to flying, and I'm the same kind of way. I started out with toy, then moved from toy to hobby grade, and then hobby grade to camera drone, and then into FPV. And I'm telling you, when you make that jump and you go from GPS birds to FPV, it is a whole new world, and it feels very, very not. What's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't feel at home. It doesn't feel comfortable. It feels completely out of your comfort zone. But if I could give you any advice, if you do want to dive in, I would say spend some time on a simulator. You'll save a lot of money that way. You'll save a lot of headache that way, and you can still try to kind of work your way up.
One of the things that gives me a bit of hope that if I were to try it, that it would be okay, is that I am a gamer, and I've been gaming for many years, and I'm okay as well. I'm pretty good. I've been gaming for many more years than I've been flying drones. So my hand to eye coordination and my reaction time on the sticks is very good. So I'm hoping that if I try it, it will work out. But I'm almost worried that it will work out, because then I'll go down that rabbit hole and never be seen again. And it'll
Absolutely. There's so much to it. It just, by the time you start getting one, you're like, oh, I don't think I want just one. What if I break this? Then I'm not going to be able to fly. So let me go ahead and get another one. And then
isn't the rule how many drones should you have is how many you have now plus one? Isn't that
or you'll never have enough, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guys, just so you know, Sean Hickey, Geeksvana's link is in the video description. Make sure you check him out. Go over there, smash the like button, subscribe, show him some love. Greatly appreciate you being on the stream tonight. And I just can't wait to see what more is going to come from your channel, because I feel like you've just been hitting home runs. You've been hitting all the major topics while they're hot. You've been reaching out. You've been fighting for the community. You've been being a voice for the Micro Drone 4.0. GoFundMe crowd that I feel was done terribly wrong. you're trying to get smaller channels to get more exposure. I feel like you're just doing great things, Sean. Great things.
Thank
And
you. But it's the drone community that I'm taking the lead from, if that makes sense, and which is why I read all of my comments. I try to answer every single comment. There's been sometimes recently we've just been too busy to be able to do that. But I'm trying to take my lead from the community and let the channel grow how the community tells me, basically. So it's been a great ride so far, and I've met some amazing people.
absolutely. And I think the community is the biggest plus to the whole hobby. Just getting tied in the community, get on your Facebook groups, get on the YouTube, get yourself linked up with people that are around your area if possible, and just get out there and fly and just have a
Exactly.
great time.
Exactly.
Safely, obviously.
Indeed.
We don't need any like broken windows, nothing like that.
Indeed.
But yeah, I think it's awesome that you want to promote the smaller channels, and I just think that's great. And I thank you so much for all your contributions to the hobby, and I can't wait to see where you go.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for being on the stream tonight. It's been an excellent stream. Couldn't have been any better in my mind. Other than we want to see Geeksvana do a power loop at some point. We would love to see that happen.
Oh yeah, I now have that challenge from Chuck It, so I will remember you, Chuck It FPV, when I manage my first power loop. It'll be you that
our FPV guys are very passionate about getting new people into the hobby, especially camera GPS drone pilots. You are like the cream of the crop. We're like, ooh, come on this side. Come to what we call the dark side.
Absolutely.
But Sean, thank you so much for coming in. I know it's extremely late over there, and I really appreciate it. And we'll make sure that we definitely get some people over there and hit that subscribe button, and make sure you check out Geeksvana.
Thank you.
All right, everybody in the chat, thank you so much for coming in. Great stream tonight. And if you have any questions, you're watching this back, feel free to shoot me an email at emarvel09@gmail.com. I'll be glad to answer any questions for you. Same thing for Sean. I'm sure they can shoot you an email if they have a question.
Exactly. Yeah. Sean at geeksvana.com. We get many emails, and we always answer every single one. So yeah, no problem there.
Absolutely. And everybody have a great night. Have a great rest of the weekend. And E-Drone and Geeksvana out.